You're listening to Cars and Coffee, your local home for IndyCar, Formula One, and sports car racing news.
Here on 91.3 WHJE.
And now, here's your host, Nathan Ward. Hello, and welcome back to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. My name is Nathan Ward. We are back at our normal time after last week's Radiothon, which was widely successful. We raised a ton of money. Thank you so much to everyone for donating. And I don't say this enough. If you are wondering what my intro and bumper music and all that is, that's actually run by my friend Matthew Thompson and his great band, Mystic. I don't really give them enough credit for the cool music they do, and I like to thank them for letting me use their stuff for my intros and all of that. So I think they have a new single out. We're going to be working to get them on the station because they make some very, very good music. But if you're new here and you want to reach out and try and get on the show and yap with me about cars for, I don't know, an hour, go find our Instagram at carsandcoffee_WHJE and follow the station at WHJE_radio. If you haven't followed the station, please follow already. We're going to jump right into headlines because I really don't have that many. Just two little IndyCar related. One of them is not so little. The first one that is pretty much completely expected is that Louis Foster has signed a contract extension with Rahal Letterman Landing and Racing. Wonderful. That's something that a lot of people were surprisingly worried about when Mick Schumacher first tested an IndyCar for Rahal. They thought, oh no, he was going to replace Foster. I think if he gets an IndyCar ride, I think he's replacing Devlin. Because skill-wise, I think Schumacher pays for himself in PR. I'm not sure, but I think he'd be who Bobby's looking for in a seat compared to Devlin. Like, yeah, Devlin's rich, but Mick is the son of Michael. Like, that's a really big name that you're bringing over to the series, and I think that might be able to pay for itself. And the big one is that McLaren put out a very, very well put together teaser for what they call Project 31. 31 is the original number used by a certain Ryan Hunter-Reay when he first made his Champ Car debut in 2003. That means that Ryan Hunter-Reay, this was the actual press release came out about a day later, Ryan Hunter-Reay will join Arrow McLaren in the fourth car for the Indy 500. That car will be number 31. I think, call this a hot take, I think Ryan Hunter-Reay might be able to win the Indy 500 this year. He almost won last year in a Dreyer and Reinbold car. He has the ability to win in a McLaren. And I think that is going to be a scary combination when May comes around. But we don't have anything for this day in history. We do have a very funny football story for the This Has Nothing to Do with Cars kind of unofficial segment. University of South Carolina blew a 30-point lead yesterday to Texas A&M. Texas A&M posted at halftime, there will be a second half because they were down 30-3. They end up winning 31-30. So I was laughing last night when I saw that come up on the crawl at like, I don't know, it was like 7 p.m., but I had checked in on the game at halftime, and by the time night rolls around, I'm like, oh my gosh, they actually lost. But anyway, if you want to find the show on Instagram, as I said earlier, here's how you do it. Want to get in touch with the show? Head over to the Cars and Coffee Instagram page at carsandcoffee_WHJE and send us a message. That's at carsandcoffee_WHJE. I'll try to answer as many messages as possible. Once again, that's more Mystic that you hear in the background. We really got to get them on the station. They make some incredible music, and again, thank you to Matthew and his buddies for letting me use all of that for my intros, because it fits perfectly. It's great music. But a topic that a lot of people have asked me to cover in depth has been the definition of a hypercar when it comes to global sports car racing, because the last couple of weeks I've been talking about sports cars a lot, and I've been throwing around a lot of acronyms, and today I'm going to, and a lot of those acronyms define the same things, so I'm going to actually define them today. But first, a little bit of a history lesson. The Hypercar story begins at the dawn of the 2018/19 World Endurance Championship season. By this point, the LMP1 hybrid class, the premier class of the championship at the time, was down to just the two Toyotas after Audi and Porsche withdrew in the wake of the Volkswagen emissions scandal, which some of you may know as Dieselgate. A history lesson in and of itself. I'm going to need to come back to Dieselgate within the next month or so. But for the first season without Porsche specifically, because Toyota versus Porsche in 2017 was actually still very entertaining despite having only 4 LMP1s on the grid. Toyota's competition for 2018 would be the crop of 8 privateer non-hybrid LMP1s that can never truly match the factory cars, mainly because it was almost illegal to do so. The ACO and the FIA were very adamant about showcasing hybrid technology in the top class of endurance racing, and if a non-hybrid beat those hybrids, it would be a very bad look for what they wanted to do in the future. We will get back to that later. But the 8 non-hybrid LMP1s could never really match the Toyotas. They only won 1 race, and that was because both Toyotas were disqualified. And with LMP1 actively withering away, the ACO and the FIA were really looking at the possibility of new LMP1 regulations or a new class altogether. The original concept for Hypercar began as a road car-based formula, kind of an extension of the GT1 of the 1990s, where manufacturers would take their top-of-the-line production models, like, say, if you've ever seen a McLaren F1 before, they'd take their top-of-the-line production models, like, say, Ferrari has the FXXK, the McLaren has the Senna. There's a lot of these really high-tier, high-end brands would take their top road car offering and convert it into a race car that would run on the classic endurance circuits from around the world. But at the same time, IMSA was looking to replace its Daytona Prototype International formula with another prototype rule set that would hopefully attract more manufacturers. This is where a divergence kind of occurs between the European and American mindset, where the Europeans, the FIA, want to go to a road car based formula. They want to stick to production technology. Well, production technology, a lot of the cars that they wanted manufacturers to copy were like one of 20s. But IMSA wanted to stick with purpose-built prototypes. And as 2018 and 2019 dragged on, only Glickenhaus, a boutique brand from upstate New York, I think. I think they're from New York. Had committed to, only Glickenhaus had committed to the formula, and the big names, such as Ferrari, McLaren, and Ford, had taken a step back from exploring programs. It was here that Hypercar once again kind of became a prototype-focused rule set, because that's all the manufacturers were looking for. They didn't want to take these already incredibly expensive road cars and make them into even more incredibly expensive race cars. Because the reason that LMP1 had become so unpopular at this point was the fact that it was just so dang expensive. A year-long LMP1 program for a major manufacturer, say Audi, Porsche, or Toyota, by the end of 2017, a factory hybrid LMP1 program could run a manufacturer as high as $100 million a season. It completely unsustainable for the returns that the WEC is bringing. That's partially why Porsche left. Porsche left more because of the lack of returns more than they did Dieselgate. Audi left because of Dieselgate because their cars still used diesels all the way up until the end. But on the 7th of March 2019, it was announced that the FIA World Endurance Championship would adjust its criteria for the new prototype regulations, with manufacturers now being permitted to enter race cars derived from road-going hypercars. This was done after several manufacturers expressed interest in a closer alignment between their production and race car activities. This would kind of wither away as well over the course of the next year or so. Alongside this, the target lap time of the new cars at Le Mans was increased from 3 minutes 20 to 3 minutes 30. For context, the LMP1 hybrids, i.e. the Toyota broke the lap record at Le Mans with a 3:14, which that's 8 miles in just over 3 minutes. That's ridiculous for a circuit that is about 70% public roads. That's insane. But they had also outlawed movable aerodynamic devices, which very similar to F1's DRS. Those were originally planned to be allowed under the road car regulations, but they were removed due to cost concerns and the fact that it would probably end up leading to an arms race. On the Friday prior to the 2019 24 Hours of Le Mans, the full technical regulations for the new Hypercar class were unveiled at the race's pre-race conference. The regulations were put together with the announcement that Toyota would continue and that Aston Martin would commit to the top category for its inaugural season. This is before COVID, so it would be the 2020 to 2021 WEC season because it was split across 2 years for some reason. Aston Martin confirmed the use of its Valkyrie road-going car as the spine of their hypercar. So even as they started to move away and back towards more of an evolution of LMP1 more than a road car / GT-based formula, they still had road car-based cars, but they were essentially road-legal LMP1s they were converting back into race cars. Toyota hinted at the use of their GR Supersport concept, which is a really cool car. For the people listening on YouTube, I will throw up a photo. I'll put up a lot of photos through this if you listen on YouTube, which, brief intermission here, if you do miss any part of the show, please go to youtube.com/@TWIRvids and listen to the entire show. You can rewind, you can fast forward, you can go to any point in the show that you might have missed and find out what you need to know, but I will try to have those up at the end of every Sunday. But the GR Supersport is actually a really cool concept, but the two manufacturers would join this Glickenhaus team, which really hadn't been heard from since they announced their program, and Bicolis Racing, one of the stalwart LMP1 non-hybrid teams. This merger of the two rule sets between the prototypes and the road cars had initially proven as a success by getting manufacturers right off the bat. Yes, they weren't a lot of manufacturers, but it's more than what LMP1 had, and it was actual like road car manufacturers. It wasn't a group like Reynard or Orica that were specifically chassis manufacturers that just throw whatever engine they can in the car. These were legit cars. You could go buy an Aston Martin. You could go buy a Toyota. But at the same time, prior to the 2020 Rolex 24, IMSA announced more specifics around DPI 2.0, now called LMDH, or Le Mans Daytona H. The H doesn't stand for anything. That's completely true. The H just does not stand for anything. It's just a lowercase h. The rule set was meant to work in tandem with the FIA's regulations and set the stage for convergence of European and North American endurance racing. So that's where you get the difference between Europe and North America, even though they're sort of the same. LMDH and LMH are at the same performance level, but their requirements for building cars are different. If you build a car to LMH rules, the manufacturer builds the car. And at the beginning, you had an option of taking a hybrid system or not. So Glickenhaus and Van Wall and Aston Martin, when they came back, did not take a hybrid system because it just didn't work with the design of their car. It is now mandatory from 2026 onwards, probably because the Aston Martin's getting too good. And that hybrid system must deploy from the front wheels. So if the car is a hybrid, it's also four-wheel drive. Chassis manufacturers like Orica, Ligier, a lot of these, bespoke prototype builders from the lower classes can still build components, but preset options for LMHs do not exist. Manufacturers to choose the LMH route include Toyota, Glickenhaus, Peugeot, Van Wall, Ferrari, a resurrected Aston Martin Valkyrie because Aston Martin had canceled their program in early 2020 in favor of Formula One, and Isotta Fraschini, which lasted a whopping 4 races. A lot of manufacturers went the LMH route. A lot of boutique manufacturers, a lot of manufacturers that you can really tell they have a distinct style. So like the boutique manufacturers in Glickenhaus, Van Wall, and Isotta Fraschini, and Toyota has a distinct style. Ferrari definitely has a distinct style. The Aston Martin Valkyrie is an absolutely gorgeous car. But for LMDH, if you build a car for that rule set, you first select a chassis to build your car around. It's very similar to DPI, where you have 4 options from Orica, Ligier, Dallara, and Multimatic. Those 4 chassis were also intended to be the next generation of LMP2 cars, the second tier, almost amateur category. Those 4 chassis were intended to be the base of the next generation LMP2 cars from 2023 onward, but the regulations have since changed and have been pushed back to 2028. The hybrid system is spec for cost reasons. It's built by Bosch, Williams, the Formula One team, Williams, and X-Track, which also builds the spec gearbox for the cars. The hybrid also deploys to the rear wheels only, so the LMHs do have a slight advantage in the rain, but the hybrid system isn't as much of a game changer as it was in LMP1. Because you could tell that the Toyotas had way higher cornering speeds, way better acceleration than the other LMP1s because of that four-wheel drive with the hybrid, because they were dumping 300 horsepower into the front axle while putting 600 into the rear. That's a huge difference. That's a massive increase from the non-hybrid LMP1s. The hybrid system in both of these hypercar rule sets don't really have that much of an impact. Like they do. They still provide a boost, but when the hybrid goes on, the engine power turns down. So you're still outputting the same amount of horsepower. The I don't know what you call it. The division of the power is changing. So as the hybrid starts to deploy and deploys more and more power, the engine slows down a little bit. So you're still maintaining around 680 horsepower. But the ratio between the hybrid and the gas engine in terms of power output is changing throughout the lap at any given track. So on LMDHs, the hybrids are rear wheels only, and every LMDH is a hybrid. You have to build a hybrid. You have to run a hybrid if you run an LMDH. So the manufacturers choosing this route are Porsche, Acura, which only races in the US, Cadillac, BMW, Lamborghini, which has recently just ended their program, Alpine, and the newcomers for the next 2 years in Genesis, or just Hyundai, McLaren, and Ford. The Genesis is actually a great topic in and of its own because the engine is actually just 2 4-cylinder rally engines bolted together. When the Rolex 24 rolls, or when the Qatar 1812, the opening round of the WEC rolls around, I'll do a piece on the new Genesis Hypercar because it's actually starting to be one of my favorites. I really like the look. Both LMH and LMDH cars are balanced against each other in a single class across both series. So in IMSA, the cars, regardless of rule set, are referred to as GTPs, Grand Touring Prototypes, a reference to the class of the 1980s and early 90s that was the last peak of manufacturer involvement in North America. And it's also kind of a callback to the original idea for this class. They're supposed to be sleek, fast hypercars that you could also buy road legal versions of, which that aspect does persist a little bit. We will get back to that. But in the WEC, all cars are referred to as hypercars, that's what I call them in passing most of the time because it's just too hard to explain this entire thing to people whenever I bring it up. This is simply a marketing device since the cars are more of an evolution of LMP1 than they are representations of actual road cars, because while the road car aspect does still remain in some places and from some manufacturers, it really didn't play out the way that the FIA originally thought. The Aston Martin program did get resurrected. The Valkyrie was still built, even though they didn't go racing with it initially. The Valkyrie was still built and then turned into a race car, so that kind of fits the true initial vision of hypercar is the Aston Martin Valkyrie. But the Toyota, what became the GR010, was supposed to have a road legal variant, the GR Supersport that I mentioned earlier. It actually ran the concept version without a roof, ran at Le Mans, not at full speed, but it carried the trophy to the starting line. They usually have a specialty car from the defending winner do that to return the trophy to the starting line or to the podium to be given to the next winner at the end of 24 hours. The GR Supersport was originally supposed to be a road legal version of Toyota's hypercar developed in tandem with the race car. the test car caught fire at Fuji Speedway, and the project was canned because the car was literally turned to ash. Like, if you've ever heard the story of the Mazda Furai, which is a one-off diesel rotary car that Mazda had built, they gave it to Top Gear to do a test, and the engine caught fire. The car burned down. It ended up being kind of a husk. Like, I think if Mazda poured enough money into it, it could be salvageable, but they never did. They just put it in the garage. The Toyota GR Supersport was literally just a pile of rubble. There's no footage of the fire, but there are eyewitness accounts, and apparently eyewitness accounts were pretty scary. Everyone escaped the fire, at least as far as we know. I don't think Toyota would try to hide anything, but the GR010 road car project was canned because of the fire, and Porsche also built a special road legal 963 specifically for Roger Penske, of which only one exists, but that really doesn't fit the original vision of Hypercar. But the 963 RSP for Roger Cyril Penske, it's a gorgeous car. It's all silver. It's literally just a Porsche 963 with an interior and a license plate. Like, it's insane that they made that thing road legal. Like, I cannot believe that they were able to pull that off. So, to wrap up, the road cars didn't really pan out. If you hear me talk about LMH, those are the European/WEC regulations from the FIA, the major motorsport governing body, at least around the world. LMH stands for Le Mans Hypercar. Those are from the WEC, or primarily race there. LMDH is Le Mans Daytona H. Those are the American regulations made by IMSA. The two categories race against each other in one category. The two rule sets make up the general hypercar category. The class is called GTP in IMSA, and the class is called Hypercar in the WEC, the Asian Le Mans Series, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So that's kind of your hypercar for dummies, almost. I should write a book or do a video or something, because that's a great idea for an art piece when it comes to this. I might actually do that when I upload the show to the website. That's a great idea. When we come back, some of those GTPs were out at Daytona this weekend for more testing for the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. More from Florida after this. You're listening to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. My name is Nathan Ward. Here's Paper Cut by Linkin Park. Don't go away. Cars and Coffee will be right back on 91.3 WHJE. Hi, if you're listening to this, that means you're listening to a replay of today's show. I just want to say thank you for listening, and make sure to subscribe to the This Week in Racing YouTube channel so you never miss another episode of Cars and Coffee, along with highlights from your favorite motorsport series. If you're listening on the WHJE website, go to youtube.com/@TWIRvids. If you're listening to this on YouTube, just click the button below. Thank you so much for listening. Now, let's get back to the show. We now return to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. Welcome back to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. My name is Nathan Ward. We have some news from Daytona International Speedway. The IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship teams from all four classes, GTP, LMP2, GTD Pro, and GTD, they have all been down at Daytona testing a lot of their new machinery for 2026. Before we get into the technical details, here's how you can find the show on YouTube if you missed the show and want to rewind and listen to another part of it. Want more racing news and highlights along with full show replays?
241.428 miles an hour.
Head over to the This Week in Racing YouTube channel so you never miss an episode of Cars and Coffee and highlights from your favorite racing series. Just go to youtube.com/@TWIRvids. There's how you can listen to every single show that I've ever done here if I don't get them on the website immediately, which it's sometimes hard to get things onto the website. Sometimes people are busy. But if you can't find the show you're looking for on the website, you can go to youtube.com. or youtube.com/@TWIRvids, and you can find all of my shows there as well. So the first thing that I'm really looking at here is the updated Cadillac Hypercar. They've unloaded a new version of the V Series R prototype with a couple of major changes. The front dive planes have been kind of rolled back a little bit. They actually took them off completely. The main struggles that the car faced through its first 3 years of competition, it was too fast in the corners and too slow on the straights. The car was too draggy. It had too much downforce, which really hurt it at Le Mans specifically. Yes, it won pole and locked out the front row last year, but that's with no drag whatsoever. And they've really been struggling at low drag tracks in general. So the rear wing on the Cadillac is almost completely redone. It's pretty, I'm going to say it's like 6 inches lower, maybe even more, maybe a whole foot lower than the 2025 spec Cadillac. It's kind of jarring to see the difference. The whole wing assembly, including the end plates, has been kind of shrunk down into the rear bumper, and the shark fin almost looks abnormally tall. But overall, I think it looks better. It looks sleeker. It looks meaner. It looks like a Batmobile in bare carbon. It looks really good. But to the news headlines from the IMSA test, Will Power is joining the 75 Express Mercedes team, run by Kenny Habul, fellow Australian. He was going to attempt to do the Rolex 24 with that team a couple years ago, but unfortunately his wife encountered some health issues and he was forced to withdraw. The BMW GTP team has debuted a new partner in Team WRT from Belgium and updated bodywork. Unfortunately for the fans of the giant BMW front grille, including myself, that grille has been made smaller because apparently having 2 gaping holes in the front of your car does create quite a bit of drag. But the BMW, honestly, still looks as good as ever. The new grille doesn't look proportionally bad, and I'm kind of looking forward to what WRT is going to do with this car, because this car's really come into its own in the last couple years. It's really struggled in WEC, but overall in IMSA, it has done quite well. It scored a few wins with Ray Hall Letterman landing. It's sad to see RLL go, but they are back with a different manufacturer. I will get to that in a second, also in a different class. But WRT has experience running this car, and I think they can be a little bit more successful in IMSA than they are in the WEC. At least this year. BMW did not have a great season this past year. Riley Motorsports, now known as Myers Riley Motorsports, they shook down their new Ford Mustang GT3 Evo and announced that former F1 driver and former Lamborghini factory driver Roman Grosjean will be joining for the Rolex 24. I love the Ford Mustang. Like, it's a cool car. Like, it's pure muscle. It's a giant car. Like, if you're familiar with sports car racing and remember the BMW M8 GTE from a few years ago, the Mustang reminds me of that. It's big, boxy. It's got that big, angry V8. I love the Mustang. I love the Mustang so much. FAF Motorsports, the Lamborghini factory team in GTD, has unveiled, or has finally given the Lamborghini Temerario GT3 its first IMSA-sanctioned outing. I really like the Temerario. It's not a massive departure from the Huracan, but it looks like a combination of the Huracan and the Corvette C8. I love the Corvette C8. The most interesting thing to me about the Temerario, at least, is the fact that it doesn't have rear wheel covers. I mean, it does, but they're just very, very high. They don't really, cover the wheel. This thing is going to shoot gravel if it runs off the road, and it will, at this point, we should be thankful we don't have open-top prototypes anymore, so drivers don't have to deal with following the Temerario and getting gravel shot up into their face. But that's the only strange thing about this car, but overall, the looks, perfect. I love the Temerario race car. Porsche has a couple new updates for their 992 variant of the 911, their GT3 car they debuted a couple years ago. The Ford Mustang also has an Evo package, but it's very, very light, but it's expected to do a lot more good for the car, make it more aerodynamic. It's very hard to make a box cut through the air, but Ford's kind of pulling it off. Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing showed off their new McLaren 720S GT3, my favorite GT3 car of all time, perhaps. Actually, it's Bentley, then the McLaren. But the McLaren is my favorite currently active GT3 car. And I can't wait to see what RLL can do with it. I love the 720S. It's great to see McLaren back in IMSA because Inception Racing switched to Ferrari mid-season. And it's just good to see that car back because I love the McLaren 720S. The Penske IndyCar stars, Joseph Newgarden and Scott McLaughlin, have been on site with Porsche testing both the number 6 and number 7 Porsche 963s. They're hopeful for a drive at the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Joseph Newgarden, I think, won a couple years ago, one of the same years he won the 500. I think it was 2024. He was in the winning Porsche Penske car. I don't think McLaughlin's ever driven a 963, at least in a race scenario, but I'd imagine Penske could put them as the fourth drivers for either car. That's not out of the realm of possibility at all. Already talked about Cadillac's updates. Acura's updates are very, very minor, and so are Porsche's. Interestingly enough, only the two Penske cars are in 2026 spec. The JDC Miller Porsche, the banana boat car, as I like to call it, as a lot of people like to call it, that car is still in the 2025 body kit, which again isn't that much different, but there are some, topical changes, some aerodynamic changes. The JDC Miller car has actually been very fast over the course of the Daytona test, which has really surprised me. Because the JDC Miller car, at least throughout the last year, they had kind of a horrid year. They didn't really get a lot of the engineering data that Penske did, and they were lagging behind the field with the 85 car. But they had Nico Pino, who drove for Proton in WEC and the IMSA Endurance Cup last year. Since Proton's not running those cars, at least not in North America. We'll talk about that next time because the Porsche situation in WEC is kind of weird. But the Nico Pino did a great job. Bryce Aaron, Indy Next drivers in that car. Who else? Timon Vanderhelm, who's been at JDC for multiple years. And Matt Campbell, one of the factory guys, was also testing that car. But the banana boat seems to have a little bit more speed than what we had originally thought. The GTP and LMP2 test days are done. There really isn't much to talk about in LMP2, at least from an engineering standpoint, because the Oracle 07 is not going to change, and it won't get replaced till 2028. So that's really just kind of since no one's running any other chassis, unlike a couple years ago when Sean Creech came back, that's really a non-player. That's just leave them to do what they do. I love LMP2, but I'd love LMP2 more if they had multiple chassis. And speaking of LMP2, Brian Herta Autosports lineup with it's kind of beginning to take shape, but they've announced 2 bronze-rated drivers, which I wouldn't imagine would go to the Genesis cars in 2027 when those cars come over to North America. Brian Herta has an existing relationship with Hyundai in touring cars in Michelin Pilot Challenge. I wouldn't be surprised that they would become the Genesis factory team, especially considering that they have partnered with an existing LMP2 team to run a prototype this year. That seems like the logical progression. But they've announced that Misha Goikberg, a very experienced bronze driver by bronze driver standards, by amateur standards, and Ben Keating, also a really experienced bronze driver by amateur standards. Ben Keating really shouldn't really be a bronze. He should at least be a silver, but I think if you're older than 55, you cannot be any higher than a bronze. So that's just how it goes. But Ben Keating is a very, very experienced driver, a very, very good driver. And I'd I look out for this car at the Rolex 24. PR1 Mathiasen has been a very good team at the Rolex in the past. They've been Ben Keating's been incredible there. He's been so good that he's actually been comfortable with doing double duty in a GT car and a prototype in the same race. He did that last year. He did that the year before. He's the only bronze driver to ever drive a hypercar, at least until 2027. Ben Keating is a very, very talented driver for the rank he is at. So is Misha Goikberg. And I'm kind of... They have Tristan Vautier, Goikberg's old teammate at JDC Miller. They have him on site this weekend, and I'm actually very interested to see how this Brian Herta Autosport lineup shakes out, because I think this could be a very, very strong lineup for the Rolex 24 in January. From Session 1, it was really the Acuras that have been the class of the field. It's really been the case at Daytona ever since the introduction of GTP in 2023, but it was Nick Yellowly and Tom Blomqvist at the top of the standings in the two Meyer-Shank Acuras, 93 from 60. And third, kind of surprising everyone, was the 85 JDC Miller car of Nico Pino, who has been, I think, in every session except for one. Session 2 was very much the same. The 93 Acura was ahead once again, this time with Renger van der Zande behind the wheel. The number 6 Porsche Penske was second, and the 85 JDC Miller car was once again third. Session 3, more of the same with Acura on top, this time the 60 being driven by Colin Brown, the lap record holder on the Daytona Oval. That's kind of a funny story that I think I should cover at some point. The 85 JDC Miller car was second this time with Bryce Aaron behind the wheel, and the number 24 BMW closed out the top 3. Session 4, it was the 85 that actually took top honors with Nico Pino behind the wheel again from the 93 Acura and the number 7 Porsche. Session 5, the final of the GTP sessions, was a BMW 1-2, and the Porsche Penske number 6 was in third. So really everyone except for Cadillac had a turn at the top here, but that does concern me a little bit because Cadillac isn't even in the top 5 in any of these sessions, at least for GTP. I don't know. I can't figure out how much actual consistent running they did, but Connor Zilic, fresh off of being robbed of the NASCAR Xfinity Championship, tested for Action Express. I think that's a driver to look out for in January. I think he ends up being at maybe a 4th driver for the number 31 Whelen Cadillac, which would actually be kind of ironic because the guy that beat him for the NASCAR Championship is driving the Whelen car. So Connor Zilic was in one of the Cadillacs, but they've been kind of nowhere through the test. But that's it for the GTPs. The last 2 sessions today are GT cars only, so you get to see the Temerario, the Ford, the Porsche, some other GT cars in action throughout the day today, and I will talk about that next week. But overall, some very intriguing plot points through the official IMSA Daytona test. I don't believe there's any other official testing that is to be done until the Rolex 24 in January. But for me, I can't wait. I think this year's Rolex is going to be good. I think if Aston Martin can really dial in their car, they have great straight line speed. I think if Aston Martin can dial in their car, they lost a lot of running because of an electrical issue. But if they can get that car dialed in for Daytona, I think that car could also be a dark horse for the overall victory because that car has incredible straight line speed. We saw it at Petit Le Mans. I think if Roman DeAngelis had 10 more minutes, he would have won that race. But it's not a 10-hour, 10-minute race. It's a 10-hour race, and he just ended up finishing second. So that's all the stories for now from the IMSA test. I will cover the GT stuff next week. And I think that is it for today's show. Thank you for listening to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. My name is Nathan Ward. If you missed any of the show, go to youtube.com/@TWIRvids. And if you want to be a guest on the show, please message me at carsandcoffee_WHJE on Instagram. I'd love to get some guests on and talk about cars for a little bit. That's all for me. Here's I Stay Away by Alice in Chains. Thank you for listening.